Hello, ma'am. Hello, everyone. I am Richan Zelda, and I am going to tackle about the Philippine literature in the contemporary period. So, after the colonization of Spaniards, Americans, and the Japanese, here comes the contemporary period. So, contemporary literature is the flowering of Philippine literature in the various languages, continue especially with the appearance of new publications after the martial law years and the resurgence of committed literature in the 1960s and 1970s. And contemporary literature defined as a literature written after World War II through the current day. So we have important periods under the contemporary period. We have the rebirth of freedom from 1946 to 1970, the period of activism from 1970 to 1972, the period of the new society from 1972 to 1980, the period of the Third Republic from 1981 to 1985, the periods from 1986 to 1999. So this rebirth of freedom from 1946 to 1970 happens after the Japanese colonization. The Americans returned in 1945. Filipinos rejoiced and guerrillas who fled to the mountain joined the liberating American army. So these guerrillas are the Filipino people who fought against the Japanese government. On July 4, 1946, the Philippines regained its freedom and the Filipino flag waved joyously alone. The chains were broken. So, on July 4, 1946, we regained our freedom. We're no longer under the government of the Americans. So we're totally free. The state of literature during this period. The early post-liberation period was marked by a kind of struggle of mind and spirit posed by the sudden emancipation from the enemy and the wild desire to see print. Since we achieve our freedom, Filipinos in this time, they are not anymore prohibited in terms of printing our works. So, Filipinos learn to how to express or nagkaroon tayo ng kalayaan na ma-express natin yung ating sarili freely and confidently and payagan that our work will be printed. So during this time, many books were published both in Filipino and in English. So here are some notable works during this period. We have The Heart of the Islands, written in 1947. It is a collection of poems by Manuel Viray. Philippine Cross-Section, written in 1950. It is a collection of prose and poetry by Maximo Ramos and Florentino Valeros. Prose and poems in 1952 by Nick Joaquin. The Philippine Writing from 1953 by Teddy Agcauli. Philippine Harvest by Amador Daguio. Horizon List from 1967. It is a collection of works by the professors of the University of the East, mostly in English, such as short stories, essays, research papers, poems, and drama by Antonio Pataxil and Silverio Baltazar. So these themes of most poems dealt with the usual love of nature and of social and political problems. Toribio Manio poem Toribio Manio poems showed deep emotional intensity. Who Spoke of Courage in His Sleep by V.M. Gonzalez. Another one also is Speak Not, Speak Also by Conrado Pedrocci. And other poets were Toribio Manio and Edith Tiempo. Jose Garcias Villas, Have Come, I'm Here, won acclaim both here in the Philippines and abroad. Since we are liberated na, longer and longer pieces were being written during this period. So we have novels and short stories in English. Without Seeing the Dawn by Esteban Havillana. It tells about the grim experiences of war during the Japanese colonization. Pen Anthology of Short Stories by Francisco Arceliana. The pen stands for Poets, Essayists, and Novelists. The Hand of the Enemy by Kirima Pulutan that won the Stonehill Award for the Filipino novel in English. The Adversary, The Trail of Professor Riego, The Distant City, are the short stories written by Luis Chodoro Jr. The new Filipino literature during this period. Philippine literatures in Tagalog was revived during this period. Most themes and writings dealt with Japanese brutality. So, aside that the writers focus on the love of the country, of the nature or social and political issues, Filipino writers also focus on what was the Japanese people have done to us, the brutalities, the poverty of life under their government, and the brave brave guerrillas. During this period also, naibalik din yung mga newspapers and magazines like Deliwayway, The Sinagtala. There are also books that published during this time. The Mga Piling Katha by Alejandro Abadilla, Ang Maikling Kwentong Tagalog by Chodoro Agoncillo, Ako'y Isang Tinig. It is a collection of poems and stories by Genoveva Matute. Mga Piling Sanaysay. It also written by Alejandro Abadilla. Parsanong Tagalog is a collection of selected poems by Joseng Sisew and Balagtas. Sining at Pamamaraan ng Pag-aaral ng Panitikan, Makata. It is a poem about the 16 poets in Filipino. The Pitong Dula, mga aklat ni Rizal. Maraming libro tungkol kay Rizal ang nagsilabasan during this period. So next is the period of activism from 1970 to 1972. So it is called the period of activism because many young people became activists to ask for changes in the government. In the expression of this desire for change, came were the writings of some youth who were fired with nationalism in order to emphasize the importance of their petition. So, this youth activism was due to domestic causes and because of the ills of the society, the youth the youth moved to seek reforms kasi in this period even nagkaroon na tayo ng freedom, the problem is it is very limited. So even the people want to express themselves freely, hindi nila magawa. That's why many young people became activists kasi gusto nila ng pagbabago sa ating gobyerno. So, these seeds of activism resulted in the declaration of martial law in 1972. The literary revolution. So, the youth became completely rebellious during this period. This was proven not only in the bloody demonstrations and in the literature. Campus newspapers showed rebellious emotions. The once aristocrat writers developed awareness for society. They held pens and wrote on placards in red paint in the equivalent of the word makibaka or to dare. So, since Filipino want a change on our government, that word makibaka means that they are encouraging other people to do also the same things that they are doing, like doing rallies, writings during the period of activism. The irreverence for the poor reached its peak during this period of the mass revolution. It was also during this period that bomba films that discredited our ways Filipinos started to come up. That discredited our ways as Filipinos, and that bomba films started to come out. Pag sinabi nating bomba films, it was short for porn movies. And wherein, itong film na to is hindi tanggap or hindi kaya-aya in the perception of the others. We have the Palangka Awards for Literature in English. It was established in 1950. The Palangka Memorial Awards for Literature had been giving cash prizes for short story, poetry, and one-act playwriting as an incentive to Filipino writers. The prizes comes from Latundense Corporation, the firm founded by the late Carlos Palanca Sr. So this Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature was named after Carlos Palanca Sr. Even if mayroong mga negative things that came out during this period, nagkaroon naman tayo ng Palanca Awards during this time. So next is the period of the New Society from 1972 to 1980. So after the period of activism, in this period, people were trying to change the negative things that have done during the period of activism. The period of the New Society started on September 21, 1972. The Carlos Palanca Awards continue to give annual awards. Almost all the themes in most rating deal with the development or progress of the country. So, kung dati, writers focus on the brutalities or the violence, now, almost all the themes deal with the progress of the country, like the Green Revolution. Green Revolution, this is the emergence of the new varieties of crops, specifically with wheat and rice varietals. The writers also focus on family planning, proper nutrition, environment, drug addiction, and pollution. So the new society stopped pornography or those ratings giving bad influences on the morals of the people, like the Bomba film. So they tried to stop that film. All school newspapers were temporarily stopped, and so with school organization. Filipino poetry during the period of the new society. Themes of most poems dealt with patience, regard for nature, regard for native culture, customs, and the beauties of nature and surroundings. Those who wrote poems, those who wrote poetry during this period were Jose Garcia Revelo, Ponciano Pineda, Lopez Francisco, and many more composers added their beat during this period, like Freddy Aguilar, and his work Anak became instant success because of the spirit and emotions revealed in the story. We also have the group of Tito Vic and Joey and Jose Marichan. The play under the new society. The government lead in reviving old plays and dramas like the Tagalog Zarzuela. The Zarzuela is a theatrical play that contains musical arts. Sinakulo. This is a play depicting the life and sufferings of Jesus Christ. And the Imbayok of the Muslim. When we say Imbayok of the Muslim, it like Dula, the Dula. na nanggaling sa mga Muslim, which were presented in the rebuilt Metropolitan Theater, the Folk Arts Theater, and the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Radio and television during this period. Radio continued to be patronized during this period. The play series like Si Matar, Dahlia, Ito ang Palad Ko, and Lonely were the forms of recitation of those without television. So, after this many performing artists move over the television. Yung mga sikat na mga television plays were Gulong ng Palad, Flor de Luna, Annalisa, Superman, and Tarzan. Filipino films during this period. A yearly pista ng mga pelikulang Pilipino or yearly Filipino Film Festival, or it is similar to MMFF or Metro Manila Film Festival, was held during this time. During the festival, which lasted usually for a month, only Filipino were shown in all theaters in Metro Manila. We have the Maynila sa mga kuko ng liwanag. The lead role was Bimbol Rocco under the direction of Lino Broca. Minsay isang gamo-gamo. The principal performer here is Nora Honor. The another one is Ganito Kami Noon, Paano Kayo Ngayon. So the lead role was Christopher De Leon and Miss Gloria Diaz. Insyang, it by Helda Coronel. The Aguila, it was led by Fernando Poe Jr., J. Ilagan, and Christopher De Leon. So the comics, magazines, and other publications during this period. So during this period of the new society, newspapers donned new forms, new on economic progress, discipline, culture, tourism, and the like were favored more than the sensationalized reporting of killings, rapes, and robberies. The leading papers during this period were Bulletin Today, Times Journal, Balita, Filipino Express, Philippine Daily Express, Evening Post, Evening Express, and the old one, Liwayway. Other magazines also is the Kislap. It is a magazine of general interest. Features mga movie, songs, or mga fiction stories. The Bulaklak. It also featured short stories, home and decor tips, poetry, and mga song hits. The Extra Hot. It features variety of media issues. The Jingle Sensation features mga Filipino music. We also have the comics like the Filipino, Extra, Love Life, Hiwaga, Classic, and Special. The overview of the literature during the new society. Bilingual education, which was initiated by the Board of National Education as early as 1958 and continue up to the period of martial rule in September 21, 1972, resulted in the deterioration of English in the different levels of education. The focus of education and culture was on problems of national identity, on reorientation, renewed vigor, and firm resolves to carry out plans and programs. Now, bilingual education means you will be using two sets of languages in native man or second language in terms of teaching students. And the forms of literature that lead during this period were also essays, debates, and poetry. So some books that came out during this period are I Married a Newspaperman. It is an essay by Maria Luna Lopez. The Modern Filipino Short Story by Patricia Cruz. Cross Current in Afro-Asian Literature by Rustica Carpio. Brief Time to Love, written by Ophelia Limcaco. Medium Rare and Tell the People. This features naman mga articles and TV programs. So next is the period of the Third Republic from 1981 to 1985. After 10 years of military rule and some changes in the life of the Filipino, which started under the new society, martial rule was at last lifted on January 2, 1981. So, a historian called this the Third Republic since the First Republic was during the Philippine Republic of Emilio Aguinaldo. The second naman was July 4, 1946, which were the Americans granted our independence. And the third one is when we were freed from the martial law. The Filipino poetry during this period, poems during this period of the Third Republic were romantic and revolutionary. Writers wrote openly of their criticisms against the government. The supplication of the people were couched in fiery, colorful, violent, profane, and insulting language. The Filipino songs. Many Filipino songs dealt with themes that were really true to life, like those of grief, poverty, aspiration for freedom, love of God, of country, and of fellow men. So, nung namatay si Ninoy Aquino Jr., many composers composed songs over his death, like Laban ng Bayan Ko and The Bayan Ko, which was revived by Freddie Aguilar, and it was originally written by Jose Corazon de Jesus. The Philippine films during this period. The yearly festival of Filipino films continued to be held during this period. The people loves for sex films also was unabated. So the bomba films was unabated. Next is the period from 1986 to 1999. History took another twist once more. The Filipino people regained their independence, which they lost 20 years ago. In the span of 4 days, from February 21 to 25, 1986, the so-called people power or lakas ng bayan prevailed. Together, the people barricaded the streets, petitioning the government for changes and reforms. So in the short span of the existence of this true Republic of the Philippines, several changes already became evident. So this was in notice in newspapers and other publication, on televisions, and other programs, and etc. So in newspapers and other publications. Newspaper which were branded Cronin newspaper become instant opposition papers overnight. So, the newspapers during this period happens to be the side of the people who opposing the government. So, this was through a bulletin today which became the opposition paper, the Inquirer, Malaya, and the People's Journal. The following newspapers continue to circulate during this period. The Bulletin, Tempo, Balita, Malay Masa, Manila Times, News Herald, ngayon Inquirer, Express Tonight, Evening Post, People's Daily Mirror, and Manila Chronicle. So on comics, one can read stories regarding the revolution of the Filipino people. So one examples of the comics is the old one, Liwayway. So on books, the Philippine Revolution of 1986 and the fire of its spirit that will carry the Filipinos through another epoch in the Philippine history is still being documented just as they have been in the countless millions who participated in the body and spirit in its realizations. So there are two books were conceived during this period, the People Power and the Bayan Ko. So both are comprising with a statement of Benigno Aquino Jr.'s death and the People Power Revolution. The Filipino songs are often aired in radio and televisions and often accompany the historical events. So one example is the Handog ng Pilipino sa Mundo, which was or the the gift of the Filipinos to the world, which was composed by 15 Filipino artists including Jim Paredes of Apo Hiking Society, and Kuli Desma is one of the singers of this song. So this song, Handog ng Pilipino sa Mundo, is served to commemorate the People Power Revolution, while I know we are familiar with the Bayan Ko, which was continued to be sung today. The radio and television, so the DZHR is one of the radio stations that gives people freedom to give opinions regarding the revolution. So this radio are allowing people to share their experiences during the People Power Revolution and other historical events. So the TV shows during this period are Chicks to Chicks, Eka si Babae, and Sa Baryo Balimbing. The poetry shows true feelings of the writers regarding the revolution. So writers, what they experienced through the revolutions, they show it through their works, and they acknowledge also the people who made part during the revolution. So the essays naman during this period shows the gratitude and happiness of the Filipinos because they achieve already the freedom they wanted. So examples are the Pag-ibig laban sa tangke by Teresita Sayo, and Susi sa ganap na kalayaan by Juan de la Cruz. And now, in the present time, writers create more and more literary works. So that's all for my topic.